Hello, and welcome. I'm Alan Arcane, private investigator of the strange and supernatural. Here I will share my case files that open the doors into the paranormal. These documented phenomena of modern myths, urban legends, and eyewitness testimonies will stretch the limits of belief. We'll explore conspiracies, ghostly encounters, cryptids, alien visitations, and allegedly true listener stories that lurk just outside of our bizarre reality. These are true accounts, mysteries, and legends drawn from the dark unknown shadows of our world. This is Mysteria Arcana. The following is a true account, told to me in person by a woman named Sare, name changed, that I personally interviewed. What you're about to hear is not a story spun from rumor or folklore. It's a memory, etched in blood and shadow, born in the heart of one of the darkest chapters in human history. A warning to my listeners. This case file contains disturbing content, real accounts of war, death, and suffering. Listener discretion is advised. Case file number 1. Souls Lost. It was a quiet Tuesday when I found myself seated across from her. We were tucked into a corner booth at a little mom-and-pop diner just outside of town. She didn't want her voice recorded and asked me to change the names of those involved, out of respect for her surviving family. I met Sare after interviewing her neighbor who had experienced a paranormal event in his home and was looking for answers. After hearing about me through her neighbor, Sare approached me, and she said she had carried her story for too long and felt it was time to unburden herself. She decided she would share it with me and felt that I wouldn't judge her and that I might understand. She said that this event will live in her mind forever. And after hearing about what she survived, I understand why. To understand this story, though, we have to go back to Cambodia, 1975. The Vietnam War had just come to a bloody close, but for Cambodia, the nightmare was just beginning. On April 17, 1975, the radical communist group known as Khmer Rouge marched into Phnom Penh. Led by the infamous Pol Pot, they promised equality, prosperity, and a nation for the people. But what they delivered was genocide. Within days, cities were emptied. Doctors, teachers, anyone with glasses or an education were branded enemies of the state. They were tortured, executed, and buried in mass graves, what history now calls the killing fields. Between 1975 and 1978, an estimated 2 million people, a quarter of Cambodia's population, were murdered or worked to death, starved, or slaughtered outright. Why, you might ask? Because communism, when taken to its darkest extreme, demands the eradication of individuality. It demands blind loyalty to that state and total submission. They do this by preying upon the weakest minds first, and then using them as a hammer to cull the herd and strip its subjects of self, freedom, and life. Sare was only 6 years old in 1975. Her family had lived near Phnom Penh, but like millions, they were forced at gunpoint to abandon their home and relocate to the government labor camps hidden deep in the jungle. She spoke of children and infants abandoned on the roadside by their parents who were fleeing for their lives and trying to hide in the jungles. They left their children because they were afraid of soldiers finding them if they heard a crying child. Sare's mother and father said that if they would die together. They were unwilling to abandon their children in order to save themselves. She also told me her father was an educated man and therefore marked for death. His neighbor warned him that the Khmer soldiers were coming for him. They had a photo and were going door to door asking where he was. Her father wore glasses and was wearing a pair in the photo that they had. He quickly removed them, and when the guards asked him his name and profession, he gave them a false identity and told them he was a farmer. The actions of his friend and his quick thinking saved his life, and probably that of his family's. The neighbor who protected his friend was not as fortunate and was murdered by the Khmer not long after. After being forced to relocate into the jungles, they were worked from sunup to sundown and without pay. They had almost no belongings, no medicine, and the meager rations provided to them were so small that after a while even the rats looked appetizing. Anyone who complained disappeared. Sare told me that during the 2 years under the Khmer regime, she lost 2 sisters and a baby brother, one to starvation, one to infection, and the baby boy never stood a chance. It was like hell, she told me, but with trees. But she wasn't just a survivor of political horror. She was also a witness of something else, something other. It was late summer 1977. Sare was now 7 years old. A dense fog had settled across the jungle camp. After weeks of rain, and Sare's two surviving brothers, Dara and Chan, had been sent to collect firewood. They took the old trail back toward their hut, weaving through thick underbrush and roots like bones sticking out of the soil. That's when he heard it, a low crunch behind them. Then another. Chan, the younger brother, turned and froze. He described seeing a man in white, standing motionless between the trees. But this was no man. The figure was a pale, almost glowing and transparent visage in the dim light. Its face was twisted in rage, lips curled back, teeth bared. No whites in the eyes, just darkness. As Chan stared on in horror, the figure began to move, not walking, but gliding. And that's when he screamed. Chan yelled at his brother to not look back and to just run. And as they did so, leaves and branches whipped at their faces. Then the rocks and sticks began to hurl at them from the darkness. The entity was trying to strike them. Chan was almost hit by a large rock, he being behind his older brother, who was faster than the young Chan, just 10 years old, to his brother's 13. He fell once, then scrambled up, sobbing for Dara to wait. Dara made it to the hut first, and in a panic slammed the hut's door behind him. Chan, pounding on the wood barrier, got another glimpse of the entity. He decided that he would circle around the back of the hut and try and enter the door there. Just as he rounded the corner, a rock struck him in the shoulder, hard. He was thrown to the mud with a cry of pain and fear. Seconds later, he flung himself up and limped inside, bleeding and shaken. The thing was gone, but it had left something behind. Chan fell into a dangerous fever that night. He didn't speak for 3 days. Then came the fearful crying and wailing. He raved about the man in white, how it hated them, how it wanted them dead. And in his fevered dreams, he saw and spoke of ethereal hands reaching for him, long, with white fingers that came to black, sharpened points. He cried of a smell like rotting meat and burning flesh that none could smell but him. He called it the spirit of suffering. He was bedridden for nearly a month, and with no medicine or doctors, he nearly died. He never spoke of it again. Sare told me her brother still refuses to discuss it, not even with his children. But she remembers. She saw the bruises. She saw his eyes when he came back, and she said he looked like someone that had stared death in the eyes. And I reckon that in a very real way he had. Sare and her family escaped within a year of this event and were welcomed as refugees into America, where her and her family thrive today. Some became engineers, doctors, and even members of the armed forces. She told me her gratitude for America and the freedoms they all enjoy here are more valuable than she could ever imagine or ever convey. She said that she will never take those freedoms for granted. But even though her story has become a happy one now, the scars still remain. She asked me to share her story, not just to honor those they lost, but to warn others. She said, "When governments promise to provide for you everything, be afraid. When they strip away freedom in the name of equality, run. And when people tell you that there's no such thing as ghosts, tell them, my brother knows better." Now, I don't know what her brother saw that night. A ghost, a demon, some echo of horrors that once witnessed by the earth soaked into the soil. There's a belief in many cultures, Cambodia included, that intense suffering can scar a place, that pain can cling to the air like smoke, and some spirits don't move on. Maybe she saw one of them. Maybe he saw one of them. Maybe in a place where so many lives were erased, something stayed behind to remind the living of what they had done. Either way, you don't walk away from a war or an experience like this one unchanged. Thank you for sharing your story, Sare. I hope you, your loved ones, and those who lost someone, and those who lost their own lives during that tragedy, will find peace. If you're still listening, friend, you've got a taste for the strange and paranormal. But don't keep it to yourself. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share Mysteria Arcana with your fellow explorers of the unknown. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, and Spotify. If you want to support Mysteria Arcana directly and help keep the lights on, please join my Patreon or buy me a cup of coffee. Links in the description below. It's generous viewers like you who will make this show a success, keep these case files open, and keep the coffee flowing. Thank you for listening and for your support. Now, let's get back on the case.
I just wanted to share my paranormal experiences. I wouldn't call my life paranormal or anything, for the most part. I feel like just a normal guy. I grew up in a small town in Idaho, just over the Utah border. We lived a simple life in a little yellow house just outside of town. I had a happy childhood, and I loved the house. In fact, when my parents eventually decided to move and sell it, I actually took down the for sale sign and asked my elderly neighbor to help me hide it. But most of the stories that I'm about to tell happened before all that. It was the early 90s. I would have been between the ages of 4 and 6 when I started having night terrors and a strange reoccurring dream. In the dream, I would wake up in bed and feel a presence lying next to me. When I got the courage to look, it was a dark shadow person. I would run, still dreaming, obviously, but I would run out of my room and up the stairs, trying to reach my parents' bedroom before this shadowy figure could catch me. Sometimes I made it, and sometimes I didn't, but it always woke me up just terrified. Anyway, not long after those dreams began, I started to see things. Small things at first. Quick, imperceptible shadows darting behind doors, slipping under beds, or moving behind curtains. They were small though, like the way a mouse might hide when it's been spotted or something. I saw this kind of movement so often, I thought it was normal. Just part of how rooms felt when you entered or left them. I never saw anything clearly, but I always felt watched. Most of those kind of sightings happened during the day, but at night it was different. The long staircase that led down to the basement where my bedroom was felt like it went on forever. Of course, when you're a kid, everything seems bigger. At the bottom of the stairs was a square hallway that connected all 5 rooms down there. Sometimes, if I walked down with the lights still off, I'd see shadows darting from room to room, inhumanly fast. I eventually asked my mom if the house was haunted. She said it wasn't, and that the previous owner was actually the brother of the pastor or bishop at our small town church, so of course it couldn't be haunted. But even after that explanation, I kept seeing things. Any parent would tell you it's common for a young child to wake up at night and ask to sleep with them. I was no exception, and for obvious reasons, one night I was laying next to my mom in our waterbed. For some reason, I noticed the hallway door was open. And as I looked into the dark hall, a figure appeared. This wasn't black like the ones I had seen before. It was white, and it seemed to ripple and move, kind of like a flag blowing in the wind. Its shape was mostly humanoid, but it would fold in on itself and shift, and I was terrified. But it seemed stuck or something, like at the door. It would move toward my parents' bedroom, stop, and then float back down the hallway. I don't know, it did this over and over, like it couldn't pass through some kind of barrier or something. Or like, maybe like it was patrolling, I don't know. But the next day I told my mom what I'd seen. She said it was probably just headlights of passing cars playing tricks on me. The only problem with that, there was no windows in that hallway, and it was in the middle of the house. So, these kinds of things happen sporadically, and my mom did her best to explain them away. but I never truly believed it was all just tricks of the light or my imagination. Everything came to a head not long before we moved. Something happened that stuck with me for more than 30 years now. At the time, my sisters were really into porcelain dolls. I never liked them. They creep me out with their lifelike eyes and cold, glassy skin. But one doll stood out from the rest. She was taller, with long black hair, frozen smile, and gray glass eyes, and she terrified me. One afternoon after school, my mom was making dinner, and she asked if I had done my homework. Of course, I hadn't. I had run straight into my sister's room, dumping my backpack, and gone directly in there to play some Super Nintendo. My mom probably kept the console in my sister's room because it was neutral ground between me and my older brother, who I constantly fought with for game time. Anyway, I remember walking into the room and seeing my half-open backpack with my reading book inside. I bent over and grabbed the book and looked at the cover. It was red, and it had a picture of a black cat sitting on an ornate chair. I don't know why that's always stuck with me. I guess it's just part of the memory. But as I braced myself for the hour of torture that was my reading homework, something caught my eye. I looked up and I saw the porcelain doll with black hair, the one I hated the most, slowly sitting up on the bed. Then it turned its head and it looked at me. I froze. It was so surreal. I couldn't think to do anything except for quietly step back out of the room and act like nothing had happened. I didn't even mention it to my mom. I was so stunned. I actually did my homework, something that I almost never did. But maybe I didn't tell her because I wanted to forget it, or maybe I didn't want to scare her. I'm not sure. But even now, just thinking about it, it gives me goosebumps. Anyway, that's my story. Or at least one of them. If you'd like, I'll come back and tell you what happened after I moved back to my hometown and into my own house. But anyways, thanks for listening. I hope you liked my story. Bye.
Hi, my name's Sam. I'm from Ogden, Utah. I have this memory that keeps creeping back in my mind every time I hear someone talk about scary stories or listen to shows like this. So this happened a long time ago. I was a teenager, 15 I think. It was summer, and I just started dating this boy. His name was Mark. He was a little older, 17 I think. Kind of quiet, but nice. We'd only seen each other a couple of times when he invited me over to hang out while his parents were gone. I remember his house being kind of cold, but not temperature-wise, just empty feeling or quiet maybe. So anyway, I went over to his house that night, and when I got there, he had a Ouija board set up on the floor. I didn't know much about them, just that they were supposed to be spooky. But when he made it sound like it would be fun, I said okay. He said he used it all the time and nothing ever happened. I remember thinking he was trying to impress me, and I really didn't know what it was, so I went along with it. We sat across from each other, both with our fingers on the planchette. I remember the room being kind of dim. He had a small lamp on in the living room, just enough light to see the board. The first questions were silly, is someone there? What's your name? That sort of thing. The planchette moved a little bit, but it didn't feel supernatural. I felt like he was pushing it. But then things changed. The answers started making less sense, like someone spelling words I didn't understand or saying things that didn't make sense in answer to our questions. I was starting to feel uneasy. The air in the room got heavy, and then I looked up and his face wasn't his face. I don't know how else to say it. He didn't look human anymore. He looked like some mix between a demon and a lizard or something. It's hard to describe. His skin had this texture to it. Shiny, but wrong. His eyes were darker, too dark, like there weren't any whites at all. His mouth looked whiter, but it had stretched into this twisted grin. I don't know how long I stared at him. It was probably just a few seconds, but it felt a lot longer. He didn't say anything. He just watched me, almost like he knew I was seeing it, like he wanted me to. I stood up. I didn't say anything. I didn't even grab my bag. I just left. I walked right out the front door, down the street until I found a payphone to call my mom. I didn't even look back. I never spoke to Mark again. I avoided him completely. I don't know whatever happened to him. I actually don't remember seeing him much after that, if at all. I have told myself over the years that maybe I imagined it, or maybe it was some kind of trick of the light or my mind playing tricks on me, but I know what I saw. Anyway, thanks for letting me say it out loud. Thank you. Bye.
Have you experienced something strange? Something you can't explain? I want to hear from you. It is simple, fast, and easy to submit your stories. Go to vocaro.com. That's VOCAROO.com. Link in the description. Then just click record, save, and share to Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com. It's that simple. And you could be on an upcoming case file of Mysteria Arcana. Or, if you prefer your story in writing, send your encounter via email directly to me, again, at Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com. That's Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com. Your true paranormal story could be featured in an upcoming case file. But for now, let's get back to the stories. What you are about to hear is a short excerpt from a much longer interview that I conducted. One that will be featured in full in a future case file. The man speaking has asked to be anonymous, and out of respect for his privacy and that of his family, his voice has been altered, and his name will not be mentioned. This story, though brief, left a lasting impression on our anonymous caller. It's not his story, not directly. It's something his father experienced while he taught at their local school. At the start of the story, the caller explained that his father rode a moped to get around and was just about to leave for home. This is the point that we enter the story. Now, let's drop into this memory together, shall we?
And so he says, dude, I can't even get on the moped right now, let alone stand up. So he said, I'm going to lay here on my desk in this classroom and rest a bit before I go home. And he said, okay, hopefully I feel a bit better to travel home. He opens his eyes where he said it's pitch black. He said it's still daytime, so how can it be black? You know? And he looks up for any sign of light. And he says, then that's when he realized, I can't move. And he said it had to be at least 8 to 9 feet tall. There was a shadow entity holding him down on his chair. So when he opened his eyes, it was like completely dark and black. He goes, how is it pitch black like this? There's no way I've been here this long. As he looks above, he goes, whoa, this is an entity standing above me. And he froze. He was paralyzed. And he said it felt like cold. Just he said it just felt like he was in almost like a freezer, just that cold. And he got mad after he realized what's going on. He got mad and tried to fight it. He was like, I'm gonna get my body back. And he's struggling, and he fights it to the point where he got angry. There was no fear in him, he said. He was pissed off that this thing was overpowering him and trying to mess with him. And so when his anger grew, the shadow entity started to step backwards and fades away through the walls.
I hope you enjoyed tonight's case files as we looked into the unknown. Please follow, like, and subscribe. If you could, share the show and leave us a review. It helps more than you know. And don't forget to send your true paranormal story to Mysteria Arcana Podcast at gmail.com and help the community and the case files to grow. Remember, friends, keep your eyes open, your flashlight loaded, and never stop asking what's really out there. Thank you, and until next time, I'm Alan Arcane, and this was Mysteria Arcana. This podcast contains discussions of the paranormal, folklore, and allegedly true accounts of strange phenomena. Some stories are drawn from listener submissions, while others are based on historical events, legends, and public records. While every effort is made to present facts accurately, some details may be subject to speculation or interpretation. This program may include content created or enhanced with the assistance of artificial intelligence tools. All music and sound effects featured in this episode are courtesy of the YouTube audio library and Pixabay, and are free to use under their terms and conditions. Some featured music and musicians are The Black Cat by Aaron Kinney, Missing Persons by Jeremy Blake, Spirit of the Dead by Akasha Gandhi, Frightmare by Yamina Contreras, House on the Hill, Everett Almond, Devil's Organ, Yamina Contreras, Nocturnally by Amulets, and Shadow Chase by Yamina Contreras. Any similarities to real persons living or dead or actual events are purely coincidental. Mysteria Arcana is an independent production. For questions, submissions, or business inquiries, contact me at mysteriaarcanapodcast@gmail.com. Please remember to submit your stories to vocaro.com. That's VOCAROO.com. Just click, record, save, and share. Thanks a lot for listening, and good night.
This concludes our broadcast day. Good night, and God bless America.